All right. So, uh, have you ever noticed how some people just have this knack for getting you to say yes? Like you walk into a store just browsing and somehow you walk out with a brand new espresso machine. You don't even drink coffee. Okay, maybe that's just me, but seriously, what is the secret sauce to that kind of persuasive magic? Well, today we're going to unpack the psychology of sales and persuasion with Jordan Belfort's Way of the Wolf. Now, you might be thinking, wait, isn't that the Wolf of Wall Street guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's him. But putting the whole Wall Street drama aside, Belfort really knows his stuff when it comes to sales. I mean, the guy built a massive empire from scratch, so clearly he was doing something right. And what's really interesting is that his methods, even though they were developed for this, high stakes world of stock trading, they actually apply to pretty much all of us, whether we're selling products, pitching ideas, or, just trying to convince our kids to eat their broccoli. So Belfort kicks things off with this core concept called the straight line. Basically, he's saying that every sale, no matter how complicated it seems, follows a predictable path. It's like a straight line, right, from point A to point B. He actually pictures it as a line with an X at each end. One X is the start of the sale, and the other is the close, the moment your prospect says, yes, I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this great story in the book about how Belfort had this like epiphany during a training session with his sales team. They were all, struggling, complaining about all the objections they were facing, feeling like every sale was this like unique, crazy obstacle course. And then it hit Belfort underneath it all. The sales process was actually the same. The key was to recognize the patterns, to learn how to navigate that straight line and guide the conversation towards a yes. And this is where it gets really cool. Belfort argues that even those dreaded no's are actually part of the process. He says a salesperson's job isn't to convert every no into a yes. It's to focus on the maybes, the people who haven't made up their minds yet, the ones who are on the fence. His straight line is all about guiding those maybes through the sale in a way that builds their certainty and ultimately leads them to a resounding yes. Okay, so how do you actually move someone along that straight line? Mm-hmm. Well, Belfort says you need to master what he calls the 3 10s. And this is all about certainty, but not just any kind of certainty. It's about creating certainty in 3 very specific areas. First, your prospect needs to be 10 out of 10 certain about the product or service itself. Like they need to believe that it's the perfect solution to their needs, like finding the missing puzzle piece. Then they need to have 10 out of 10 trust in you, the salesperson. They need to feel like you genuinely have their best interests at heart, that you're not just some, slick, fast-talking salesperson trying to make a quick buck. And honestly, this resonated with me because I remember this one time I was trying to convince my friend to try this new hiking trail. And I was so excited about it. I was probably laying it on a bit thick, going on and on about the breathtaking views and like the totally Instagrammable waterfalls. But I could tell she wasn't buying it. She just didn't trust that I actually had her best interest at heart. I think she thought I was just trying to like prove something, like I was the ultimate hiking guru or something. So yeah, the trust factor is huge. And then there was this other time where I was actually the prospect. I was looking to buy like a fancy new coffee maker, and I was all set to go with this one brand. I'd read all the reviews, I'd watched the demos, I was practically drooling over the pictures. But then I started reading some online reviews, and there were all these complaints about their customer service. People were saying they had to wait like weeks to get a response, that the company was just a nightmare to deal with. So I ended up going with a different brand, even though their coffee maker wasn't as flashy. It just felt safer, like I could trust them more.
Yeah.
But what I find really fascinating about Belfort's 3 10s is how he ties it all back to the psychology of decision making. He talks about how our conscious and unconscious minds are constantly working together, like evaluating these 3 10s, even when we don't realize it.
Mm.
It's like when you meet someone for the first time,
Yeah.
right? You instantly get this like gut feeling about them, whether you can trust them or not, whether they're being genuine or if they're trying to pull something over on you. That's your unconscious mind doing its thing,
Right.
sizing them up based on their body language, their tone of voice, all those subtle cues that we don't even consciously register.
Yeah.
And here's the kicker. Belfort says we can actually influence that unconscious assessment by mastering our own tonality and body language. He dives deep into the power of, tonality, how even the smallest changes in our voice can impact someone's emotional state and even their internal dialogue. Like, have you ever noticed how someone's voice can just, make you feel at ease? Like, you just instantly trust them, even if you've never met them before. Or like on the flip side, totally rub you the wrong way. Where you just get this like icky feeling and you want to get as far away from them as possible. It's crazy how powerful that is. And then there's this thing called tonal scarcity, where, you lower your voice to just a muffled whisper to create this sense of urgency. Like, this offer won't last forever.
It's like you're letting them in on a secret, creating this feeling of exclusivity. I remember this one salesperson who used this on me when I was buying a new phone. He was showing me this like limited edition model, and he was like, start whispering, "We only have a few of these left in stock." And even though I knew it was probably a sales tactic, I totally fell for it. I mean, it worked right. I bought the phone. But it made me realize how much our emotions can play into our decisions, even when we think we're being totally rational. But it's not just about your voice, it's also about your body language. Belfort talks about the importance of projecting confidence and expertise through your posture, your eye contact, even your appearance. It's like that whole dress for success thing, but it goes even deeper than that. It's about being aware of the signals you're sending out and making sure they're aligned with the message you want to convey. Like, if you're slouching and avoiding eye contact, you're probably not going to come across as very confident or trustworthy.
But if you stand up straight, make eye contact, and dress in a way that shows you take yourself seriously, people are going to take you more seriously too. He tells this hilarious story about going duck hunting with a prospect who was like super skeptical at first. And Belfort, being the master of mirroring, matched the guy's tonality and body language. He got all excited about duck hunting, and boom, they were suddenly best buds, and the sale, just happened naturally. It's amazing how much of an impact those subtle cues can have. Okay, so let's say you've nailed the 3 tenths. Your tonality is on point, and your body language is screaming, "Expert, what's next?" Well, according to Belfort, you need to learn how to separate the wheat from the chaff. You got to identify the prospects who are actually ready to buy. You break them down into 3 categories: buyers in heat, buyers in power, and my personal favorite, looky-loos. Buyers in heat are like those dream clients, right? The ones who are ready to buy like right now. They're actively looking for a solution, and if you can convince them that you're the answer, you're golden. Then you have the buyers in power. They might not be in a rush to buy, but they have the authority and resources to make a decision. The key with these folks is to, really understand their pain points, what's keeping them up at night. And then position your product or service as the solution to all their problems. And then you have the looky-loos. Bless their hearts, right? They're just, kicking tires, not serious about buying anything.
Yeah.
And Belfort says it's crucial to spot these folks early on and, politely move on. Don't waste your time and energy trying to convince someone who's never going to buy. It's like trying to, teach a cat to fetch. It's just not going to happen. Now, Belfort gives some really practical tips on how to quickly identify each type of prospect by, asking the right questions in the right order. And this is where the idea of scripts comes in before you roll your eyes and tune out. I get it. Nobody wants to sound like a robot reading from a cue card. But Belfort's not talking about memorizing lines verbatim. He's talking about having a framework, a blueprint for success. It's like, having a recipe for a cake.
You don't have to follow it exactly, but it gives you a solid foundation to work from. You can add your own flair, your own ingredients, but you've got that basic structure to fall back on. He's big on this idea of, strategic preparation. Anticipate everything. Have a response ready for any objection. He even encourages creating different types of scripts for different stages of the sale, like for opening, presenting, handling objections, and looping back to address any concerns. It's like, having a mental playbook for any situation that might come up. And speaking of objections, Belfort has this really interesting concept called the action threshold. which basically describes how much certainty a person needs before they're ready to, take the plunge and make a decision. Some people have a really, low action threshold, meaning they're easily persuaded. They see the benefits and they're ready to jump in. They're like, sign me up. Others have a sky high action threshold. It takes a lot to convince them. They need to weigh all the options, consider all the angles, do their research.
He tells this funny story about buying a golf swing training device at the airport. Even though he knew it probably wouldn't work, he just couldn't resist. Low action threshold, right? He saw it, he wanted it, he bought it. No overthinking, no hesitation. But his dad was a totally different story. The man could overthink a free lunch. He'd be analyzing the menu, comparing prices, trying to figure out if there was a catch. And Belfort says that understanding a prospect's action threshold is key to, tailoring your approach and closing the deal. Because if you try to push someone with a high action threshold into making a quick decision, they're probably going to back away. But if you give them the time and information they need, they're much more likely to say yes. He uses this clever language pattern to lower a prospect's action threshold and make it easier for them to say yes. It's all about framing the decision in a way that minimizes the perceived risk and, maximizes the potential rewards. He talks about using phrases like, what's the worst that could happen? And if I'm wrong, you lose a little. If I'm right, you win big. It's about shifting their perspective and helping them see the, the upside. Like, what's the best possible outcome if they say yes? And here's another golden nugget from the book. Belfort stresses that mastering the straight line isn't about manipulating people or using, shady tactics. He's a big advocate for ethical persuasion, using these techniques to genuinely help people make decisions that are, in their best interests. He talks about the responsibility that comes with the power of influence, reminding us that we should always be striving to, use our skills for good. It's like that famous Spider-Man quote, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Because let's be honest, persuasion can be used for good or for evil. It all depends on the intention behind it. And I think that's something we all need to be mindful of, whether we're in sales or just navigating our everyday lives. So what does all this mean for you? Well, even if you're not like a hardcore salesperson, these concepts are still super valuable. Think about a time when someone really persuaded you. Maybe a friend convinced you to try a new restaurant. Or, your partner talked you into taking that weekend getaway. Or maybe you convinced your boss to give you that raise you deserved. Did they use any of these tactics? Were they masterful at building certainty, using their tonality and body language to their advantage? And how could you use these principles to be more persuasive in your own communication? Maybe you're trying to get a promotion at work, convince your landlord to fix that leaky faucet, or maybe you just want to be more persuasive in your personal relationships. Understanding the straight line, the 3/10, the power of tonality and body language, it can really give you an edge and help you, communicate more effectively in all areas of your life. Because at the end of the day, persuasion is about connection. It's about understanding the other person, building rapport, and presenting your ideas in a way that resonates with them. And when you do that authentically and ethically, you can achieve amazing things. So that's our deep dive into Jordan Belfort's Way of the Wolf. It's a fascinating look at the psychology of sales and persuasion, packed with practical insights and, a healthy dose of controversy. But even if you don't agree with all of his methods, I think there's a lot we can learn from his insights into human behavior. And, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd like to leave you with this question. How will you use the power of influence? Will you use it to manipulate and exploit? Or will you use it to connect, to inspire, and to make the world a better place? It's a question worth pondering, don't you think?